Bar for Bar album reviews. Oddisee, Odd Cure. Odd Cure is the latest project from DMV rapper Oddisee. This tape is the first in 3 years since the release of the Iceberg in 2017. It's been a long time since we really heard anything from Oddisee, so learning that this was dropping the same week it was announced was a great surprise to me. If I were to compare Oddisee to another rapper, just so you kind of know what you're in for, I'd have to compare him most to Brother Ali. Not just because they're both Muslim, but because they both, at least in recent years, try not to curse in their raps and manage to bring positivity without being too corny or preachy. And they do this especially in times where I feel like we need it the most. I feel like maybe I'm just able to connect to them really well just because there's a lot of similarities between Islamic and Punjabi cultures. And that makes it feel like it's more genuine, but your mileage may vary. Getting to the project though, it starts off with the skit Call Baba. In this intro, Oddisee is calling his father to check in on him and the rest of the family because of the quarantine and the issues currently going on. It's interesting because it just feels like a regular conversation and it's just so genuine and natural. A lot of times when I hear skits on albums, they're not typically so natural sounding to me. And these call skits are something that's continued throughout the project, and I feel like it does a really good job of bringing everything back to reality, essentially, and kind of grounding the album. Aside from Call Baba, he has a few others where he calls his grandmother, his mother, his friends, and his manager. Basically, each one is kind of talking to him about what's going on. Like the one with his dad was talking about getting Trump money and catching COVID. Then when he calls his grandmother, it's like making sure that she's good. When he calls his mom, it's funny because she's complaining about having to take the subway and he's like, I'll buy you a car. And she's like, no. Then he calls his homies and his homies trying to get some masks. And then he finally calls his manager and the manager's like, yo, like, I don't think we're gonna be able to tour for a while. Like, you got some music? And he kind of just goes like, yeah, I got it. Anyways, I don't want to go too into the calls themselves just because they're pretty self-explanatory when you listen to the album. Like, there's not really much to go into a deep dive for. So let's get into the songs. The album officially kicks off with the track The Cure. This track has Oddisee talking about himself as if he were the cure to a lot of the issues happening and how he's the voice for those that feel as though they have no voice. He also touches on some of the issues that black people face in their daily lives, like getting pulled over for nothing. The second verse goes into different methods that people enlist when coping with stress, especially the stress of what's happening on the news or with COVID. He mentions some of the ways that he copes, like downplaying things when he's being serious and being scared when he's joking. But he also mentions that he prays, which to some people is their ideal way of meditating or achieving some sort of peace. The next track we get is Shoot Your Shot. This song has two parts, which are split into the two verses that we got. The first verse talks about what sounds like letting someone into your home that needs somewhere to stay. It sounds like the person in the first verse is someone who often allows people to stay with them in times of need. So he kind of has some rules in place already in his mind. In the second verse, it sounds like Oddisee is speaking from the same perspective as the first verse. However, this time instead of him helping somebody out, he went to go visit someone or is talking about the lifestyle that someone has. That's one option. However, based on the chorus of the song, it sounds like this is about two brothers. And how, in the first verse, he brought his brother into his home and helped him in a time of need. In the second verse, it sounds like the other brother has finally gotten back on his feet and now lives this life of luxury. The first brother then comes in to remind him that even though he currently has all these things, like, remember where you came from, but also if you ever need help, that I'm here for you. At least that's what I think is going on. I'm still a little bit unsure of what the chorus and the title of the song means, but it's an enjoyable track for sure. The next track on this album is I Thought You Were Fate, which features Oliver St. Louis and Saint Ezekiel. The features here are really just for the chorus, just like most of the other features on this album, but I feel like it is a very solid chorus still. I can't exactly say what this song's about, but I can give you an idea of what I think it is. This first verse seems to be about being with somebody, but then realizing that you don't necessarily vibe anymore and you want to leave this place. Then it talks about when you leave that place, you look back and really start to analyze what was going on, which leads to the chorus that says, I thought you were fate. Then in the second verse, it sounds like Oddisee is talking about how although he can read my stars, he doesn't, because, knowing your fate might limit you as a person. It kind of sounds like he's talking to those who heavily rely on fate and the idea of whatever happens, happens for a reason. It feels like he's using himself as an example of taking your fate into your own hands, because at the end of the day, it's really up to you to control your own life. At least that's what I think. Up next, we have the track Still Strange, which features Priya Raghu and Saint Ezekiel, who again are just on the chorus. The track starts off with Oddisee talking to his wife, I think, and how he's basically put himself in self-isolation after coming off of tour in Thailand. Basically, he's locked himself into a studio apartment all alone, and he's kind of just going through the emotions of not being able to see your significant other or other people in general. At least that's what I got from the track. Given that he's actually put himself into self-isolation, I could see this definitely being what the song is about. But it could also just be a more general song about people in isolation and quarantine, and just kind of staying away from people that you normally interact with, like on a day-to-day basis. This brings us to the penultimate song, No Skips, which features Ralph Reel. And this is one of my favorite songs of the album, mostly due to the beat, the delivery, and the message that I assume. It basically has him talking about people in his life and that he's not necessarily kept in touch with. Whether that's due to them or him is unclear, but it sounds like he's willing to reconnect with some of his old homies that, now that they're older, their egos have shrunk a bit and they probably get along much better now that they are older men. This brings us to the final song on the album, Go to Mars, which again features Oliver St. Louis. I really like this song because Oddisee talks about some of the issues that he's facing when it comes to daily life and what's going on in the world, and how he wants to escape and go to Mars. Basically just leaving this planet in favor of something different or something new, just because there's so many issues here. By the end of the track, though, he arrives at the vessel that he's going to be going on to take people away, and he's come to the conclusion that he doesn't want to go anymore. Like, he doesn't want to leave because he personally has reached the top of the bottom. And which is, it's still a bottom, but it shows that he can continue to rise. So basically, he's like you can kind of think of it like he's underground and he's finally reached ground level. And now that he's there, he's like, oh wait, I can actually go beyond and keep going. I really like this track mostly because of his singing on it, and also because it's a pretty uplifting track without really overdoing it. Again, he does this in a way that just feels really natural to me. My favorite tracks on this album are Still Strange, No Skips, Go to Mars, and I Thought You Were Fate. This album is greatly appreciated during these times because rather than ignoring what's going on, Oddisee makes it a point to talk about what's going on in the world and in his life, whether that be through the music or through the calls that he has with various people on this album. And he manages to keep everything very positive and uplifting. And he does this in a way that's not too preachy or on the nose about any particular events, and that's something that we don't really see too often these days. you can listen to most of these songs and get an idea of what's on the song, but if you go just a little bit deeper, you find a little bit more and kind of connect it to what's going on. It's not as abstract as like an album from A$AP Rock or anything, but it's also not overly in your face with what he's trying to say. With that said, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this album and if you've listened to it. Also, let me know if there's anything else that you want me to review. I have a few albums kind of backed up. It's really just a matter of fitting them into the schedule. But anyways, like and subscribe if you want to see more reviews and more breakdowns, because I have a breakdown of J. Cole's new songs coming once they drop. They are going to drop tonight, meaning the video will drop tonight. That's all I got. Thank you for watching, and stay safe out there. And I feel like he does a good job of